Hello, and welcome to the LLG vlog, your fortnightly roundup of local government law and practice. You're with me, Dennis Hall, LLG Bulletin Editor, and as usual, Helen Bennett, LLG's Executive Director of Policy and Governance. Great to see you once again, Helen.
Lovely to see you, Dennis.
Now, this week's discussion is about something that represents one of the largest corporate risks to local government. Council's use of AI platforms and infrastructure, not just in your legal department, but in council departments generally, not just to support officers in the numerous roles they undertake, but in actually taking decisions on your council's behalf. Not just day-to-day routine decisions either, but decisions with definite legal consequences and real risks.
Yeah. And if you ever thought AI was something belonging to somebody else, someone else's issue, then I think everyone should think again because around 95% of councils are using or exploring AI with generative AI, the most common. So that we think things like drafting, summarizing, chat box. Uses include triaging service demand. So in sort of departments such as housing and social care, fraud detection and enforcement, actually, and things like internal productivity, so minutes, reports, and freedom of information handling. I think to be clear, Dennis, artificial intelligence is recognized as providing enormous opportunities to businesses and the public sector alike, but it does need to be handled with care, doesn't it?
Well, we've seen examples of that. Private practice has had numerous wake-up calls about AI. We've covered them in this vlog, but the most recent concerns were raised amongst legal insurers and underwriters, would you believe? In fact, there was an article in the Law Society Gazette on this. And if people like them have concerns, then so will insurers and underwriters in the public sector, especially with their increasing use of what are known as agentic systems, and we'll come on to what they are. We need to take a closer look at this, Helen. So, what is the law that governs AI? Well, the UK does not currently have a single AI Act, unlike the EU. The UK follows what has been termed a pro-innovation sector-led approach. There is no overarching AI statute, as I mentioned, statute rather. No existing regulators, the Information Commissioner's Office, the EHRC, and the Competition and Markets Authority all apply current law to AI.
Yeah, so there are core legal regimes that must be applied to AI. So there's, and it's worth just running through them, I think. Data protection in UK GDPR, public law and decision making. So think Wensbury rules, equality laws. So in print, like principally the public sector equality duty, freedom of information and transparency, procurement and contract
Hmm.
law, and people often forget this, intellectual property and
Yes.
copyright.
Helen, it's a vast array of
Mm,
law that our members need to get a handle on here. Now,
absolutely, yeah.
it is. Now, let's look at this thing about AI and insurance. Reports of lawyers citing AI-generated cases and putting client details into open generative AI systems have drawn the attention of the regulator and the courts, solicitors heard the other week. But insurers read these reports too, and as law firms renew their professional indemnity insurance, the repercussions are impossible to ignore. And similar issues will be being watched by counsel insurers, of course, as well. Now, here's a quote from the article I read. One lawyer said, I couldn't believe the number of questions on the renewal form this year about AI use. One firm told the Law Society's Gazette they wanted to know about policies, risk plans, and what
Mm.
staff were doing with it. I'm not sure I had all the right answers.
It's interesting, isn't it? And I wonder whether we'll start to see clauses that exempt coverage in certain, we probably will actually. So insurers and compliance professionals agree that AI is now an important component of assessing a firm's risk profile. And it's a similar set of risks for the local government sector as well. Um, but has the profession quite grasped this is something which has to be effectively managed and supervised? Because remember the ethical perspective last year, High Court Judge, it was Mr. Justice
Yeah.
Ritchie, said that solicitors and barristers involved in deploying fake case citations had demonstrated appalling professional misbehaviour.
Indeed. And what about this one? Recently, two immigration solicitors were referred to the Solicitors Regulation Authority for apparently using generative AI to create irrelevant or false legal cases.
Mm.
And one even admitted to this. They admitted to putting emails from the Home Office into the ChatGPT app to try to get it to explain them. Now, at the Law Society's Risk and Compliance Conference recently, this is the one I was alluding to earlier,
Mm.
this was an event attracting an audience likely to be switched on to regulatory perils, one would have thought. Well, what they heard was 14% of delegates in one poll agreed that AI was allowed to be used by firms, but largely it was unmanaged.
Mm. I think a lot of the big firms are actually banning it for the time being until they can get a proper handle on it. But
Mm.
I know that the SRA is expected, excuse me, to publish new guidance on safe and compliant use of AI in the coming weeks. So this should help, let's hope, clarify the rules
Mm.
relating to generative tools. But it will also make clear that client confidentiality and privilege, as well as client consent, remain non-negotiables. And I think they have to.
Yes, indeed. But I suppose for our sector, let's turn now to what
Yeah.
really matters. So, what are the key risks, and what should monitoring officers be doing now? Well, let's look at the key risks. The key risk themes lawyers should be advising on. Number one, explainability and defensibility is the first risk. If you can't explain something, you probably can't defend it.
Mm,
And the second one, data quality equates with legal risk. AI outcomes are only as good as the data in the AI infrastructure that you're using. Inaccurate data is bound to lead to unlawful decisions. It's as simple as that. And
yeah.
biased data
Yeah.
is going to lead to discriminatory claims.
Yeah, all very important considerations. And then
Mm.
I think cybersecurity and misuse is a top concern. Um, it's a risk cited by councils. I believe about 83% of councils from our data sources are concerned about it. And this is like things like data leakage via AI tools and deep fakes impacting democratic processes. We've seen a lot of AI generated videos, for example. There was quite a big one recently around question time that was proven not to be
Mm.
real. So we know how people can be really influenced by that. And I think also the fourth on the list has to be reputational and trust risk because
Yes.
um, I think again from our data sources, 68% of councils cite public trust as a major AI risk. I think that's right. And poor AI use can quickly become a monitoring officer issue. Actually, so what should monitoring officers be doing? Well, AI does create new statutory risk areas, especially in terms of things like lawfulness, potential discrimination, and data integrity. I think they're the hubs.
Got to be. And some of the typical governance gaps include, well, some authorities don't have a corporate AI policy. Still,
Mm,
only 41% of councils have one. There is evidence that there is weak oversight of data and AI model quality. Now, what's the best practice that's emerging in this area of AI governance? Well, some authorities are creating an AI register, like the Data Protection Impact Assessment Register. Some are designating a senior responsible officer for AI. Others are putting in place mandatory legal and IT sign-off for higher risk use.
mm,
And many authorities are now establishing an AI corporate policy framework. These are the key
yeah.
things we should be looking at.
Absolutely. And I can see in terms of employment law, the same sort of approach that's evolved over the years with social media restrictions also applying to AI as well. And we'll probably end up seeing employment tribunal cases that involve the use of AI. So policies will be very important.
Yes,
Hmm. Now, you mentioned a word I'd never heard before at the top of this vlog. And whenever we talk about AI, there's all this different jargon, Dennis, that we're all going to have to get up to speed
there
with.
is. There is.
So
Inevitably,
yeah,
AI comes with its own baggage of jargon. And
yeah,
frankly, there's no way through this, Helen. Our members are going to have to get to know some of these terms. How can our members procure or assist in the procurement of AI technology unless they've got a handle around some of these terms? So if I may say so, for me, I've been quite brave in doing some homework on this in an attempt to help members through this forest of new terminology. So what we've got here is if you like, an AI jargon Q&A. Artificial intelligence does bring a new wave of jargon, and to use AI tools effectively and to understand the regulations shaping them, lawyers must first grasp the fundamental concepts underpinning this technology. So, as I say, this final part of our item today aims, fingers crossed, to demystify some of the buzzwords and provides an overview of the practical limitations that matter most to the legal profession.
Yes, so thank you for your homework because I'd have probably struggled without it. So I have read it. So I think to start, I think it's essential we should distinguish between the two types of AI that we talk about a lot.
Yeah.
So what are
Well,
they, Dennis?
yeah. Well, you hear the two terms, predictive AI and generative AI.
So what's the difference? Tell us that.
Right. Predictive AI analyzes existing data to find patterns and predict outcomes and has been used for years now in the applications. And one example is one called e-discovery. But in contrast, generative AI, this is the interesting stuff. This is designed to produce something new, such as a new brief, a podcast, a short video, or an infographic. It can do all of that.
Mm. So I've also heard the term large language model, an LLM, which I'm sure used to be a law masters or
Yeah,
something. But
yes.
at one
Not
point,
to be confused with that.
yes. So a large language model, what does that mean?
Yeah. Well, that's a synonym for generative AI, but the
Okay.
technology has now evolved. Most models nowadays are what are known as multimodal, which means they are capable of handling not just text, but also images, video, charts, code, and audio.
Okay, now this is a new one on me
Yeah.
because I always think about aeroplanes, but what is a black box AI vending?
Yeah, now this is important for our procurement lawyers, Helen, because this is a high risk area for procurement lawyers in particular. What is known as a black box AI system is an AI system whose internal workings are a mystery to its users. So this is an issue when you're specifying and going through a procurement process. For many of the AI things that we talk about are black box units. Bear with me while I go through and try to explain this. But in a
Okay.
nutshell, where does and should contractual risk be apportioned when councils are purchasing stuff like this? That's the legal issue. Users of these devices can see the system's inputs and outputs, but what they can't see is what happens within the AI tool itself to produce those outputs. And examples, there are some proprietary examples of these types of AI, and one is ChatGPT. Meta has a one called Llama. These artificial intelligence models are trained on massive data sets through complex deep learning processes, and even their own creators, this is true, their own creators do not fully understand how they work.
It's worrying, isn't it?
Yep.
That's got to be worrying. These are complex. The black boxes, I believe, are really complex and can deliver impressive results. But I think the lack of transparency surely must then make it hard to trust their actual output. And I guess that the opacity of a black box model can hide cybersecurity vulnerabilities, biases, it will be hidden, privacy violations, and other problems.
Helen, precisely, that's the central issue with these.
Um, so let's move on. This is
Yes,
difficult
let's.
to try and cement in there. So what about what's called foundation models? What do you understand those
Yeah.
to be?
My understanding is these are all-encompassing AI models, and they're often referred to as foundation models because they serve as the base upon which developers build various additional applications. So I imagine many large local authorities are really involved with this type of approach to procurement, for
Mm.
example.
I think some of the language used in these terms are quite interesting, actually, quite innovative,
Mm.
because there's also something, and it makes me think of the Wild West for obvious reasons, the frontier AI.
Yep. Well, Silicon Valley isn't too far from the Wild West, I should say. I think that's right. But anyway, yes, frontier AI. The most advanced or state-of-the-art versions are known as frontier AI. These complex models utilize vast, what is termed computational power, which is why you may have heard regulators discuss the terms compute and computing power when discussing the regulation of AI.
Well, I know that legislators like the EU, because they've done, as you said at the outset, quite a lot of work on this. They need a yardstick
Yep.
or metric for these computer processing resources, and they focus on something called a flop.
Yep.
Flops. What are they?
Yep. Again, as far as I've been able to understand, these are known as floating point operations. Not as confusing when you get into it as you might think. You can think of this as the total number of calculations, if you like, that are required to build the model itself. And this metric has been adopted as a threshold for scoping in models subject to the closest regulatory scrutiny.
Okay, so you could understand it like this. The legislative approach by regulators rests on the assumption that more calculations equal more capabilities, which equals more risk.
Yes.
Although generally true today, I understand this premise is becoming, as I understand it, this premise is becoming insufficient for measuring risk as technical advancements help build models that are uh, smarter without getting much bigger. This is
Yep.
complex stuff.
It
So
is.
yeah, in other words, size of resources matters in terms of how these computer resources are governed.
You've got there. That's exactly it.
Okay. Another term I've heard is angenic AI. What's that?
Yes. Now, this means an AI model that does not just answer questions, it can execute processes automatically to complete workflows. Now, this is an area local authorities will definitely be interested in developing. It could be capable, an agentic AI system could be capable to navigate the necessary websites to complete, for example, the registering of a land title at HM Land Registry, or go through a housing benefit process and
Right.
present you with a final package or validation on screen. It could cover a myriad of different tasks and processes in local government with the minimum of human reaction. Local authorities are bound to be looking at these innovations.
I'd say so. Now, this is something I am familiar with, this next terminology, AI hallucinations. I do know about those.
Well, we've
You
all had
explain it.
hallucinations. Well, when reading the bulletin, that is, because we've read about them in relation to false cases being produced before judges, haven't we? Now, beyond the theory, legal professionals will face various practical issues when using generative AI tools, and we've seen that. The first and most commonly known challenge is reliability, and that's what hallucinations are about. This can happen. Hallucinations can happen for a few reasons, but you have probably heard of these where an AI tool confidently invents facts,
Mm.
cases, and citations.
Yes. We have seen that and you've talked about it, but what can be done about it?
Well, there are some technical methods which exist to address these challenges, although I haven't used them in practice. For instance, a model may have access to real-time information via tools like a web search. Using something called retrieval augmented generation, doesn't trip off the tongue easily, this tool can connect to an external knowledge base and use that information as context to create a more accurate answer.
None of this trips off the tongue easily. Um, I've looked at that further because we have discussed these problems before, and many systems also provide a citation back to the source on which their answer is grounded or based upon. So you can check that. And a prominent example of this practice is the tool known as Notebook LM, which works by grounding its input, so specifically on the sources given by the user. And this is to ensure the analysis remains within the provided context.
However, it's important to remember that a model may still
Yeah.
misinterpret the source text it is grounded in, or make up citations and attribute real quotes to the wrong sources. So if I can just add a point here, as we've said before in the vlog and the podcast, members using these tools should verify everything that they are discovering with them.
Yeah, I think if you treat it like a toddler who's telling you about their day, there's going to be some really truthful bits in there, but there will be some flights of fancy. Um,
Yep.
just before we go, there is news from the government on AI. So the ministry's just launched what it calls local AI, and it's a new team designed to support councils in adopting artificial intelligence responsibly to basically improve efficiency, reduce costs, and enhance local services. So local AI aims to address, the government says, the growing pressures on local authorities where frontline staff as we know, often spend significant time managing information across multiple systems, which then impacts their ability to directly support residents.
Indeed. And while some councils have already begun exploring AI solutions, others are still building the necessary data foundations to implement them effectively. Once again, if you'd like to share what AI projects your council is developing, do let us know on the forum webpage. Well,
Absolutely.
that's all for this episode. We'll see you next time for more legal insights and updates.